Bonsoir. Bienvenue dans un monde, un bol de sein. Malheureusement, mon français, même je sais, un peu est dommage. Donc, ce sera en anglais. My apologies for that. I do not speak particularly good French. I do
That
try.
was perfect.
I have a little bit here and there, but my French is not as good as some of the people we have tonight. Just like my Blood Bowl is not as good as the people we have tonight. Welcome to One World, One Blood Bowl, episode 50, The Toxic Elite. I am pleased to be joined by two friends of mine and a new friend. So we have, obviously, to my side, if you're watching this physically or in somewhere that has a screen, we have the lovely Purplegoo, the better purple. Evening, Phil. Welcome. Thanks for coming
Good
back.
evening. Hello. I thought that's all right. I thought I tuned into Eurovision for a minute at the start.
Just trying to be the global citizen that I hope I in some ways am. Obviously, now to my side, as Olivier is bouncing around the screen, we have Core. Welcome, KFoged.
Good evening, and 5 points to France.
Hello.
5 points en
There
français.
it is.
And joining us from somewhere in the lovely country of France, we have the delightful OlivierDuLac. Welcome to One World, One Blood Bowl, Olivier.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation.
Oh, well, I'm super pleased to have you on, even if the camera may come and go as it did then. It was lovely to see you. And if we have you back, that'd be great. If we just have you orally, I'm sure everyone will be very, very happy. Now, when I put out the advert for this, I did explain the toxic elite moniker. It wasn't chosen. I didn't ever choose to be called that. It came from one harmless little joke I made about the Bonehead podcast. And for the record, I'm a big Bonehead podcast fan. And because I mentioned that in the advert, some of the questions we have do relate to that. And I'm sure I'm going to get you all talking about it in a minute. But after one little mild joke, and I make jokes about everyone and everything, someone in their Discord described the toxic elite and said it was particularly that presenter of One World, One Blood Bowl, everyone involved in One World, One Blood Bowl, Fumble players, particularly Fumble admins, and Blood Bowl 2 streamers. Now, as all of those described me, pretty much they were saying me. So it's been something that people have joked about me with ever since, and I'm quite amused. I joke about other people. People should be able to joke about me. So I figured for episode 50, to celebrate making that milestone, what I wanted to do was to bring on the actual elite of Blood Bowl and talk to them about being elite at Blood Bowl and just a general ask me anything, a few random questions, a few silly questions, and some Blood Bowl ones. No real shape to this one. We're literally just going to talk and chat and see where it takes us. But when I put the advert out, I think an interesting place to start. I mentioned that Olivier is currently the NAF ranked world number one. So according to NAF, the finest player of Blood Bowl alive today. He displaced in that glorious position the gentleman above me, my good friend Kur, who was Blood Bowl number one. I mentioned that in the advert too. And then I also mentioned that Purplegoo is, of course, an incredibly good Blood Bowler. I'm sure you know him as an ex-tournament director of the NAF, captain of Team England, a mainstay of the England side for over a decade. And if you've ever played him, one of the greatest Blood Bowlers you'll ever have faced. I think that goes without question. But I got pretty instantly a message from Phil saying, I don't know if you wanted to mention that I used to be NAF ranked number one as well.
Absolutely. That's the most important thing.
Which I found quite an interesting message to get. So I'm going to start there. All three of you have been NAF ranked number one. So there you are, Phil. I've corrected that for the world. They all now know. How important to you is that as a thing? Is it something you sought to do? And are you pleased to be there? I guess that's where I want to start. That's what I want to talk about. Thank you to the chat, congratulating us on hitting 50 episodes. I never thought we would, but we are. So here we are. I have promised that if we ever get to 100, I will do one entirely naked. But you're to be saved from that for at least 50 more episodes. So I'm going to start with Phil. You're the one that mentioned it to me. Is it important that you were NAF ranked number one? Is that something you set out to do?
Firstly, it's very important that we torpedo this podcast quickly so we never get to 100. So I might say something incredibly racist to try and get us taken off air.
You won't be the first. Just rag about North American Blood Bowl. That's pretty standard on this.
I have been somewhat outspoken in my time in Blood Bowl about Blood Bowl rankings being rubbish. And I've probably exaggerated that point to a certain lesser or greater degree. I think that to be ranked relatively near the top probably means you're any good, but I think delineating between first, third, 10th, absolutely meaningless.
Yes, I mean, the reason I have picked the three people out on tonight, sadly we did have a fourth, and I want to cover why Malmir isn't here at one point, who I also put in my top 5 Blood Bowlers that I know of, if asked who I think the best Blood Bowlers on Earth are. The fifth one, by the way, would be another French coach, Justician,
Yeah,
who
deserve it.
gets there for me by the grounds of having won everything there is to win in Blood Bowl. He's won the Europa, he's won the Euro Bowl, he's won the World Cup, he's won a major on Fumble, he's won the Chalice on Blood Bowl 2. So he's got, I think, the full set of just about everything you can get, and an incredible Blood Bowler at any team I've seen him play with. So those are the 5 people I usually mention. Now that's very rude of me. It leaves out people like Pete W. Who's currently in the top 5, Andy Davo, who I think peaked at second in the NAF rankings and certainly is
Third.
third. Okay, he's currently third. I think he did touch second briefly. Certainly, it's been in his bio. It's not like him to exaggerate things. I'm sure that wouldn't be the case. Gegster, of course, an incredible Blood Bowler, who someone described as playing him as like playing a python. I think that's very fair. He just sucks all the space out of the board and destroys you by just not giving you anywhere to go, really, and you feel an idiot, and then he just turns you over, takes the ball, and smiles as he wins. So there are, I confess, loads of other good Blood Bowlers I should be mentioning. And there's almost certainly some, possibly even, and maybe even in North America, who I just don't know of, who are equally as good as the people we do have here tonight. But the rankings do exist, and you have been top of them, Phil. Did it not make you feel good, surely? Nonsense as they may be.
No. Did you feel good when you were top of the Fumble rankings? Was that something that gave you joy?
I mean, fleetingly, I suppose. Someone pointed it out to me when I was about third, and I thought, well, I may as well just play some toxic elite teams and push on and see if I can get to number 1. So I did. I noticed when I was there, and then I can't say I looked at it again, really. So fleetingly, I will confess, it seemed like a little mountain to climb, so I climbed it. It was there, so I did it. Surely it felt good to look at that list of names, no matter how much nonsense you think the rankings are, and see Purplegoo right at the top.
I mean, not particularly. I think you three, with your sort of internet celebrity and stardom and channels and things, I think it's probably very helpful. But for those of us who are future averse,
okay,
doesn't really mean a lot.
But it does put your name out there. People will know that about you. Certainly now they will. Is that a good thing? Does the aura that comes with it of, my goodness, I'm playing the Purplegoo, is that helpful?
Do you know? No, it's not helpful. I played a game relatively recently where the guy sat down opposite me and basically said, "Oh no, I've got to receive and kill everything," and we just went all out in order to do that, and it was successful. So no, it's the opposite of helpful.
So you get maybe the Man City effect of people know, hang on, this is going to be a tough game, so I'll change what I normally do based on this.
Very occasionally. I don't think it's common.
Cool. Were you delighted to be ranked number 1? You were there for a long old time.
Thank God, COVID. I think it was like it's fun, but it doesn't mean anything. But it was there, so why not do it? I've done the same with Fumble as well. But you could do it, but it doesn't mean anything. Besides, it's fun and people can say it. It's like Phil says, from 1 to 50. That's not much of a difference.
Really? So you think everyone in the top 50 is pretty much the same?
There's a lots of differences, and what is good for some is like we can argue from here to New Year's what is good, well, and who is the best. It doesn't really yeah.
I mean, and that's literally what we're going to do tonight. I am going to ask you who's the best at Blood Bowl, so make sure you've got an answer for that one when it comes. One of the things I did notice when I was looking at the rankings to prepare for this, I do actually do some preparation work. I noticed that Purplegoo's in the top 50 twice. Does that make him twice as good as... Thanks for bringing a cat on, Core. That always makes streams go well. People love a cat. Does that make him twice as good as some of the other people in the top 50? Because I should explain, the NAF rankings are done by race, aren't they? So
probably means I've had plenty of time to play with plenty of things.
Okay. Olivier, same question, of course. How delighted are you to be the current NAF #1, the best
Uh,
Blood Bowl player on Earth?
I think when I became number one, sorry for my English,
No.
it was like 2 years ago at Euroball, and during the game, before the game, I know that if I won it, I became number one, and I was like, the game was very hard because I was down 1-0 at the half. And then my coach asked me to go for the win against Undead with my scavens, and I finally we won it, and I was really happy because with the French team, the Euroball didn't go as we want it, but individually. That was a great finish to a big quest I started maybe 5 years ago. So I was really happy to arrive to the top of the mountain, and actually I'm always happy and really happy to that I can make some jokes to my friend like I'm the number one and just listen to me, and um, that's giving me a lot of joy in my life. Yeah.
Great.
So I like it.
So you genuinely, that was something you knew was happening. Did it put extra pressure on that game for you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think last Saturday I play Scavens for tournaments in one day, and I was like, if I didn't make 2 wins in the tournament, my first place is in danger. And I was like, okay, in the second match, I have a really tough match against a slam coach. I fucked 3 times in the year, and I won it on the turn 16 with a 3+, 2+, 2 dice. It was not a difficult action, but I could have missed it, and finally won the match. So I was happy at the end of the match because I know that I will stay number one, and it was a good thing for me. I'm pretty happy about this situation, and if I could stay like 1, 2, 3, 4 years more, 4 more years, I'm happy.
Well, just do what Core did and ensure there's a global pandemic that stops people playing Blood Bowl, and you'll be there for ages. Core, same thing then. Was there extra pressure knowing that you were #1 and that perhaps if you played that race and it didn't go well, that might be in jeopardy?
The thing was, like you said, with the pandemic, I didn't really get to play it. I didn't get to play them that much. Really, I didn't have that many chances. And I was a bit fed up playing Dark Elves because I played them for anything and everything for quite a while. So for me, it was just a good time to just leave them for a bit and do something else instead.
Leaving them for a bit, isn't that the same as protecting your ranking?
You can call it that.
Absolutely.
You can discuss. Clearly not, since if to protect my #1, I will have to play them to stay on top of it. Oliver. No, and I quite enjoy it. There's also the fact that Oliver is, I suppose, maybe not young, but it's younger and newer in the game than both me and Phil. So quite enjoyable seeing new names on the list pop up. So it's not the same names that've been there for a while.
And of course, it
Every
makes
time there
those of us
comes
in
new
our
people.
dotage realise there's just no point. There's a younger generation coming through, and they're hotter and better, and they care more. Someone has mentioned in the chat, so let's throw that straight out there. Is the NAF #1 ranking? Is it partly a function of just having the time to go and play enough tournaments?
Or time and location. So for many, many years, the English have dominated it, and that's because we had NAF Championship, and we have quite a wide variety. So quite a wide skill gap in our scene, and also, the English would travel to World Cups, Euro Bowls, etc. So with the introduction of nationals, which is a thing I was quite keen to do when I was TD, it gives other countries more of a chance of amassing the ranking point multiplier that we get with the NAF Championship. So I think time is definitely a big thing, and location has historically been a big deal. Imagine you were born in the middle of the States. You've got a long old way to go, right, to play high,
Do anything.
a tournament.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you probably don't get to a lot of local tournaments. You've got to go to one of the coasts to play a major tournament.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare. If you care about NAF rankings, if that's a thing for you.
I mean, I've noticed that Sol, our North American friend, Florida-based, has been zooming up the rankings with his Skaven. And I do wonder if hence Skaven are a cheat code to a good NAF ranking. But that seems to be that there's a lot of major American tournaments played around the Florida area now, so he's had that opportunity to get those wins in. Olivier, what's the scene in France like? Is there plenty of tournaments? I mean, in England at the moment, everything sells out pretty much the instant it's announced, even if it's a year ahead.
Yeah, when I discuss with Justicium, Karak, and some old coaches, they told me about the fact that before there was like one tournament in one region by month, and now if you want to play every week, every weekend, you can do it. For example, we have a French coach, Nabolo, would just play like I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15 tournaments since the start of the year. So of course he won five of them, and he is in top position to become a French champion. But so yes, we have a lot of tournaments right now, and if you have the time to play and if you want to do it, it's more easy to climb the NAF ranking.
Now, bringing those extra tournaments in, there's one place in London that I've been a few times for a tournament, and the twice I've been there, I think 3 times actually, and come away with 2 wins. The field, I have to say, not massively strong. There's a couple of decent players there, but the level is, as Phil says, there's a big gap between some people that are new and trying a tournament for fun, and some sweaty old tryhards that are going there to try and win the thing. In France, is there that range? Do you have some new blood bowlers as well, or is it mostly veterans?
Yeah, we have a lot of new coach, and I see a lot of veterans who are retiring from Blood Bowl. Uh, when you see our French team this year at Euroball, maybe one or two coach will not come back after, and you see like you were talking about Justicium. He didn't play anymore Blood Bowl right now, so a lot of old coach stop playing because of a family change, and maybe after 15 years playing Blood Bowl, you want to see something new.
Yes, I mean, Phil, that brings us to you and the old Mount Goo story again, doesn't it? Back when you topped the rankings on Fumble, people said you deliberately stopped playing. Was that more about just finding other ways of playing your Blood Bowl and feeling, I've done that now?
I don't think people really said that I stopped playing to protect the ranking.
I
I,
did.
I think that is a device that you're using to enjoy a bit of fun internet time. I do not enjoy the format of competitive football fumble divisions, even more so with the new rules. I think it's I don't want to say it's in a bad way because that's not fair on Krista and it's not fair on some really good coaches that play there and really enjoy it. But I think it exacerbates the issue that I have with the format. So I was having that issue with the format at a time where I so happened to have a decent ranking and I moved on to playing football in different ways.
Fair enough. Now, I want to get to some of the questions, obviously, that we've had from the lovely audience. I did ask them to drop their questions anywhere, and some of them have done. As we're talking about the new rule set, I was having a chat earlier, not so much a question, but a question did arise out of it, with the delightful Crystal Hunter. I don't know if you know him. He's a very experienced Blood Bowl 2 and now Blood Bowl 3 streamer and player. I don't think he's ever gone onto tabletop.
I keep trying.
Yeah, I've mentioned he should, and that his playstyle would work much better on tabletop in Resurrection format.
Yeah,
But
that's
there we are.
yeah.
He resists.
We will get him at least to one, I'm sure.
I'm sure one day. Now, one of the things he's been talking about with me is he's got a whole new plan for how he sets up, particularly his human teams against Basher teams. He thinks that no one has yet adjusted successfully to some of the changes in the 2020 rule set. Notably, he was talking about how quick snap doesn't allow you anymore to move players on the line of scrimmage that are in contact that one space forwards. And everyone is still setting up 2 spaces back. He feels we can set up a lot safer 1 space back, particularly if you split the 3 on the line of scrimmage, if you're following me. So that anyone on those 7 spaces on the line of scrimmage, or 1 either side, is in contact with someone, and therefore on a quick snap can't step forwards. So he says if you split the 3 on the line of scrimmage, you've covered 9 squares where people can't step forwards, meaning you could enjoy being only 1 step back from the line of scrimmage, offering more anti-foul defence against the things that you have put on the line of scrimmage. Do you think he's right in that there's still aspects of this new rule set we're not successfully adapting to, having had so long under the last rule set?
If I can talk first,
Certainly.
he sent me maybe yesterday his defense position,
Yeah.
and I think it's a really good strategy, and I think when in my session, I love Blood Bowl because uh, you can play maybe 150 match with Kevin and still have a different match, a different win condition, different things to do, or different push to find, and the game still interesting. And with a new rule change, there is some adaptation. Maybe all didn't find out. So. I think yes, there is a lot of new things to try again.
So like me, you were really interested in that because I think he sent me the same shot. You found it interesting? You found there was something in there, isn't there?
Yeah, that was really good.
I mean, essentially, he put an ogre in the middle with guard and then a catcher with defensive straight behind it, preventing
Right.
anything that doesn't have strength 4 getting easy hits on the ogre, and also meaning that even once you knock it over, fouling it is just much, much harder to do. As a mass gang foul, you can still get two, maybe 3 assists in, but beyond that, it's proving much harder. Phil, do you think we've adapted to the new rule set? Have we successfully adapted, or have we just carried on in the old patterns and hoped that's going to work for us?
I'm not aware of Mr. Hunter's work. It sounds interesting, this thing. I'm more than interested to see new things, obviously, all the time. I think, have we adapted? I mean, it's not that much different to the point where there's a huge sort of relearning of the game. I think if you were good before, you're good now. I think there are some lazy traps that it's easy to fall into. So I think in the format that Olivier Core and I play most often, sort of NAF Resurrection Blood Bowl.
Yep.
I think that the better coaches win percentage has gone up in the new rules, and I think that's largely because of reroll management, and it's because I think the better coaches don't fall into the trap of, well, I'll lazily double wall off now because that worked before, it'll work again. That is the straightforward thing that I fall into, and people forget that jump exists, for instance. So I think there are probably things that could be optimized that we as a complete collective have not optimized yet. But I don't think it's a massive thing.
Okay, cool. Let's bring you in. Do you think we haven't adapted yet to the 2020 rules? Are there blind spots that us, tired old vets are still using, that's still negating the fresh of the new things that we could be trying instead?
It would be crazy otherwise, to some degree. We've been playing similar rules for so long. And no matter what and how we do, there'll still be stuff people keep repeating, and we keep repeating. I've been another, like, one of my old pet hits is people doing like the whole method thing for one turning. No matter how much we try to make people look at other ways of doing it, that's still most people's default way of doing it. It's, of course, will be, no matter what we do, it will be stuff, and that will be. We'll probably move on before we get to a state where there isn't anything that could be better.
Well, talking of moving on, we do have, this is by name withheld on request. We've got a few from them. They say there's rumours they keep hearing about a new rule set coming out in 2025. Now, some people I'm talking to here might be playtesters for that, so I'm not going to ask you to break any NDAs. But if a new rule set did arrive in the next year or two, what would you be hoping got changed, if anything? Obviously, this could go on for the entire evening. Let's try and keep it to a bullet points of one or two things. Let's go in reverse order this time. So we'll start with Core. Anything that you would be desperate for a new rule set to address or change?
I think like anybody else, anything +2 can go to die somewhere. That's probably my main. And if they could take wildly inaccurate with it, I'll be happy.
Okay. Olivier, anything you would see desperate to see changed?
Yeah, I would love to see a double apothecary. It's I think it's a big cost when you buy your team to take two apothecaries, but there is a strategic issue with two apothecary, and I think when you have a really bad match, sometimes the best way to lose at Blood Bowl is to lose your team, and with two apothecary maybe you can save some players and come back in the game. So I think it's something it's not too 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 bad. It's not so too hard to take to try, and it could be a really good thing. And actually, apothecary is not really easy to use because badly hurt is on 40%. So I think there is some options to try some things around this and to develop some meta about one or two apothecary or zero. Right.
Now, I mean, I get very triggered about the apothecary. It seems that every rule change it gets worse, whilst regen stays exactly the same.
Yeah.
I mean, it was already working on 50% of the time, and they've dropped that, as you say, to 40% of the time. Does that feel reasonable and responsible? Core, Phil, what do you feel about the current apothecary rule?
I would rather it went back to where it was before, personally. But I don't think it's. I still think it's a vital addition to almost any team. So, it's a must-have.
Yeah,
It's not
absolutely.
weakened to the point where you can't have it.
So even on your NAF builds, you're still pulling apothecaries in?
100%, yeah. Yeah, keeping a knockout on the field or badly hurt back in the game. It's massive.
I mean, I have to say that I always intend to use it for a KO, or as you say, a first half badly hurt to make sure they're there for the second half. But then when a decent player goes down to a serious injury, it's tempting, isn't it, to roll that 40% and try and have them back?
Well, yeah, and I have done. Right, you sort of commit to this rat ogre is massive to this Skaven team. He must come back. It's take the risk.
Cool. How are you feeling about the current Apo?
Yeah, I think everyone, let's get back to 50%. That's fine. It's like I played progressive in Wood Elves where we keep having at least 3 miss next game every freaking game. 3, 4, 5. It's just, yeah. I think it's unnecessary. I don't think was any particular reason for it.
I did see on I think it was a Reddit thread, someone talking about, let's just make Apo simpler. Let's make it work, but it only steps the injury down one. So a death becomes a serious injury becomes a badly hurt becomes a KO becomes stunned. Any takers for that?
Interesting.
It's interesting, yeah.
Yeah. And then in that case, we can leave it.
Well, I think it certainly needs a look. I think we can all agree with that.
Yeah.
Phil, we didn't touch. Was it? No, Core. We didn't touch on. What would you change? No, we did. Phil.
It's that.
Yes, we started with
Yeah.
you. Phil, we didn't get to you. What would you change for the new rule set, if anything?
I love this rumor because there's been this rumor every year for 20 years. Oh, there's a new rule set next year. It's coming back.
It probably won't be. So but just in case.
Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. I think progression in general is the thing that needs help. So we touched on that already. So if you think of Resurrection, the worst bits of the two rule sets since Games Workshop came back have been smoothed over to a lesser or greater degree. So Blood Bowl 2016, there was the cards that every game had to have. If we just ignored that, But if you are a new player buying the box, you're stuck with that because you don't know any better.
Yeah.
Blood Bowl 2020, the stars were absolutely awful, and to a lesser or greater degree, we've sort of learned to get rid of those. But I think progression and people taking the box home and not really knowing Blood Bowl or formats like Fumble, I think that side of the game needs a little help. And I think that we've touched on attrition already via the Apo, but I think the skill system has not worked. I don't like picking the skills, not skilling up a player deliberately to keep your TV low. If you play a load of games with the team, randomizing skills until you get a good one. And I know that redraft, if it was implemented in online, would help that to a lesser or a greater degree. But there'd just be a new workaround. There'd be a new TV sweet spot maximization, and I think that side of the game needs help.
I mean, would you go back to, single skills on a normal roll and doubles give you a double skill, or?
Maybe that, or maybe play with the TV of hoarding star player points, or I think so. The problem is you can't make it too difficult because the person that picks up their first game of Blood Bowl is going to go, oh bloody hell, this is difficult, But the utopia is the Monkey Bowl style. This skill is very good. Block is super good. It's worth a load of TV. Bar is absolutely bloody terrible. It's worth no TV at all. And I'm not saying that we can get all the way there because new players would be overwhelmed, but something in that direction might be a starting point.
We actually had a similar point you touched on briefly as we went through from the lovely Mike Davis. So whilst we've been talking on that, let's pull one of his questions in. Stars. There has been a lot of controversy over stars in the 2020 rule set. Do mega stars make Blood Bowl into not Blood Bowl in terms of reducing the skill level overall, do you think? And are you happy that a lot of tournaments seem to have ruled mega stars either out or made them so expensive that your team is, very gimped to have them on in the first place? How do you feel about stars, Olivier? As a primarily Skaven coach, I'm thinking, do you tend to try and sneak a
Um,
star in?
I think I have not the same mindset about stars as you English because I read a lot of things where star was dangerous for Blood Bowl, and in my opinion, stars are really great for make some équilibre balance to the game with minus teams who can barely compete against a tier 1 team. So yeah, I love stars and I love special rules. Just you don't you have to 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 gérer ça to manage this to not make it crazy for the game, in my opinion.
Okay. So how do you feel about the fact that a lot of tournaments in the UK are now banning stars entirely? Do you think that's a mistake?
Wow, that's sad. It's really sad. Uh, sorry guys, but for me, stars are really nice to the game, and I sometimes I see some tournaments where people come with 2 stars and goblins and we win it with just some dice. But in a lot of cases, I think people are just happy to bring back their star player, and for me, it's really important to have it in the game.
Certainly, they sell like absolute hotcakes. According to anyone that's looked at Games Workshop sales figures, the stars sell out, and hobbyists do love to paint them. They're very very popular on that side of the hobby. We've got rival cats now. I don't know if you're feeling left out, Phil.
Yeah, yeah. Phoebe, 18 years.
Oh wow, that's a beautiful old cat then. Cool. I can sense you don't agree from the scoff upon your face. What's your position on stars?
Uh, I'm dreaming back to the days where we had stars in 1 in 10 tournaments instead of 9 in 10. I don't really need it. The problem is The problem is the tier 1 team with stars. You're right, it's fine with some other teams. And that's like Wolves with Griff and other shitty stuff. It doesn't really help my day. It doesn't make my enjoy Blood Bowl more. Creek with a free bribe. Mork with +2 Mighty Blow.
I don't see the problem.
It's fine.
Isn't it adding flavour and fun?
Not my fun.
Okay.
I think it's great that we live under a big tent where all things are accessible and possible. I want it kept as far away from me as humanly possible. I think so. I don't think it's just tier 1 teams with Griff. I think somebody sits down opposite me with Snotlings and Morg. We're going to have 2 hours of non-Blood Bowl. Morg is going to blitz a thing. If the thing dies, great. If the thing doesn't die, we'll foul it and see if it dies again, and then we'll throw a bomb. And then it's just I don't think it's Blood Bowl personally. I think it's great that others lean into it. And actually, so 2 very wildly different tournaments. I was at Water Bowl earlier this year that had allowed star players, and everybody in the room was incredibly grumpy about it and saying, this is rubbish, let's not do this again next year. And I was in Canada earlier in the year where it was the Wild West, all stars happening. People loved it, right? So I think it's great that that everybody gets what they want, and surprise, surprise, the English are the most conservative of everybody. So I'm only adhering to my national stereotype.
Well, I mean, Ever the Diplomat there saying that it's good for everyone, but you don't personally want to be playing with a lot of stars.
No, I won't. I will not go to tournaments. I mean, Canada was a holiday, right? And the Water Bowl was a thing that I do every year. But I wouldn't go to a tournament at the end of my garden with all bets are off. Morg, let's go crazy.
Now, I've been preempted by Corn Knight in the chat, because exactly where I was going to take this next, Olivier, is to you and say, is this a sign of the toxic elite that they don't want things that are going to perhaps produce higher variance, perhaps not allow their old ways to work? Is it toxic elite to say no stars when we know people love them?
For me, so
For
can
you?
you repeat the question, please?
My question is, are these 2 old grognards
Yeah,
denying stars just
absolutely,
because it hurts their win
No,
rate by introducing
as
more variance?
as I said during my intervention, stars could be a really game breaker in the game, and changing a game between 2 good coach in just a dice game and no strategy, because Morgan Tog made 3 casualties on the 3 first turns. But I think in a big in most of the match and most stars, it could be interesting. And when you take a star, you have to pay for it. So your roster is not as good as the opponent, and you pay the price for the star. And yes, Griff Obovald or Morgan Tog or Bomber dribbles not are really crazy, but in the most of case, I think it's interesting to play with stars or against them. So there is some strategy, some different way to play. So I stay on my opinion, and during a long time, I want to take Fungus to Euroball.
Wow. So, I mean, I think stars aren't an issue we're going to resolve. I love going to tournaments where there's no stars. I kind of do agree with Phil in that it doesn't sometimes feel like Blood Bowl to me. But maybe that's because I'm old, and perhaps Blood Bowl is changing and I'm not changing with it. So perhaps I need to get with the now and say, yeah, let's have the stars, let's have the silliness, and just go back to some beer and Skittles and having fun, rather than being toxically elite and trying for something that I know I can control the variance on.
But isn't the
It's a
point?
translation of toxic elite thing that I don't agree with.
Well,
I know that you keep referring back to this phrase, which I'm not really sure has any grounding in.
Well, I mean, it was a label set upon me by others, so it's one I happily accept. But it's not one I would certainly don't feel I am or set out to be. While we're on that subject, let's talk about that. You are the elite of Blood Bowl, you 3. There's no way you can deny that. I presume that's true. None of you would deny that you are elite level at Blood Bowl. Nice quick answer, Olivia. I like that confidence. Phil.
Very bashfully English about it, and you can't win. So if you
Okay.
describe me as not elite, I'd be
You'd be
secretly
just as happy,
disappointed.
wouldn't you?
Yeah,
But I'm
yeah.
not going
But
to.
since you are, I'm feeling embarrassed. So
Okay.
you can't win.
That speaks well of you. Kur, you're not really English, are you? So surely you can be proud to be elite.
Oh dear. I've been here too long. No, it's fine. You can put it on me. And back to the other thing. The good thing about the tournament scene now is we got everything and anything. The the Wild West, there's space for the Wild West and there's space for non-Wild West, as long as everything is different.
But even by calling it the Wild West, aren't you being slightly toxic?
I don't know if it's toxic saying it's not what I like. I said I want Europol to be 8 identical human rosters by now.
Well, I mean, your notable smile, and as BB Josh just said, you're far too nice to ever be considered toxic. Is toxic elite just one of those phrases? Is it used about anyone that's good at Blood Bowl, perhaps by people that are less good? Is it just a way of beating the better players up? Do you feel there is a toxic elite in Blood Bowl?
Not really.
I don't think so. Look, I think you're right. I think in some cases it is used as a, "Oh, I wish I was better than I am. These people appear to be better, so I'm going to label them as something." But I think we are blessed in Blood Bowl that 90% plus of the people that you'll meet are lovely, and I've come across, the 10% or the much vanishingly few. They've been of all skill levels, people that I've not enjoyed playing against. So I don't think the whole toxic elite thing stands. And we're giving Core and I are giving, throwing some shade at tournaments with loads of stars. There's been a explicitly the very first explicitly competitive tournament advertised in recent days,
Mm.
and there's been some. Sorry, in the UK, it might have been different elsewhere, and there's been some grumbling about that as well. So I think what we're seeing is grumbling about something you don't like, which is human nature.
Yeah, I was going to come on to that. I have a question here from someone I've called Pipe-ish. As Pipey didn't specifically ask me to ask this, but I'm going to anyway. The Blood Bowl Masters is his new format that he's organising. He's going to keep half the places open available to Euro Bowl players for the first 6 months of it being advertised. That will end in May. It's not actually until something like November of 2025, and yet it's filling up already because everything does in Blood Bowl. And the other half are just to anyone who wants to come. Is this a good idea to have Blood Bowl tournaments where we restrict it just to the better players, or at least half the draw to just the better players? And to do that, he said you have to have played in Euro Bowl to qualify for it. Or is it a sign of creeping toxic elitism? Let's start with Core. How do you feel about the Blood Bowl Masters?
I told him that it's not my. I don't like any invite format by default.
Hang on, you
Personally,
invited me to your birthday bowl, and that wasn't open.
No, but it was not a NAF tournament either.
True.
I think if it's a NAF in my world, it should be open, but that goes for anything, including where we're going in a week. In my preferred world, but it is what it is. It will be popular. I might attend, I might not.
Okay. Olivier,
not-
have you heard about the Blood Bowl Masters, and does it interest you?
Yeah, absolutely. I heard about this like 2 weeks before, and I think when you do something, you have to commit integrally in it. So you make a tournament with invitations, and it just for the people you want to come at the tournament, or you open it for every participant. I think make a mix like this doesn't. Doesn't what are the thing for the half participants who are coming just to take some loose, or I don't know. It's pretty strange for me, weird.
Does it interest you to come though?
Yeah, absolutely. But but just I don't understand why there is this mix type on the two situations. And we have some French tournament in January where we want the organizer want take the 8 best player of the year and make a sort of playoffs to determine to
Yes, determined. Yep, the best French player.
determine who are the best. But it's yeah, I think you just have to commit yourself in this kind of tournament or not, but not to make a mixtape like this.
Phil, I noticed your name on the list to go. You were very quick
Yep.
to say, "Yep, that's up. I'm up for that." Is that about the
I'm
organizer, the
not
location, or the format?
the organizer, certainly. Pippi has been organizing some of the best tournaments that I've been to for a long time, so
Yep.
I know it's going to be great. The reserving spots for Eurobowl coaches, I'm not wild about, I have to admit. It's been done before in the UK, so there's a Blood Bowl 2 league tournament that reserves half their spots for people from the Blood Bowl 2 league. So it's not without precedent. The reason that I'm keen to support it is because as the UK scene has got denser and denser and denser, there have been more and more tournaments, and coaches have flooded into the game, which is brilliant. I think it's harder and harder to point at a tournament and go, that is a really high quality tournament. There are going to be a lot of good coaches there. I'm going to get some great practice, and that is a meaningful tournament from a toxic elite point of view, to use your favorite phrase.
There we are.
So
You're starting to own it now.
Yeah, I'm really supportive of. This is a tournament where people can go to try and play at a high level. If I were on the fringe of Team England or trying to get into Team England, I think this was great. I'd love to go and take a couple of scalps. That would be amazing. So, we've got loads and loads of tournaments that are local league in a scout hut. They have loads of different tournaments with loads of different aims. I think it's absolutely okay to have a tournament with the aim of bringing together a room full of good players. I think that's great.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this before. There's only about 2 miles from me. There's a scout hut where people meet on a Thursday and play Blood Bowl. They're their own private league. They, as far as I'm aware, having chatted to them a bit, none of them ever go to any other tournaments or to anywhere else. And they're quite happy. They paint their pieces, they play Blood Bowl together. And I just thought, that's not somewhere I should really go. I'm not going to be helpful in that setting to those people, I don't think. And I think sometimes you need that variety. But with ever more tournaments coming into line, I mean, next year, just where I live in London, there's going to be a London series of about 10 tournaments, which is going to be organised into a yearly long thing. In the southeast, they reckon there's going to be 20 tournaments in the southeast tournament series. I know the southwest is having a tournament series. I know the Midlands is having one. I presume the same's happening up north. I don't know. I'm not really that interested. Is there a fear now amongst the elite players that we're all going to end up perhaps in these smaller pods and not meeting up for these 2 or 3 big ones a year, do you think?
I don't think it's
Olivier.
fair. I think it's been realised.
Okay.
Sorry, go on, Olivier.
Yes. In France, we have a fear for some players about this. I think we can lose some level because we have a lot too much tournaments, and there is some measure which are taking to change this. For example, one association can only organize 2 tournaments a year. So we try to limit the number of tournaments, but as I said before, there is a lot of tournaments, and today maybe it's more easy to win a tournament because there is just a biggest number of it, and yeah, I understand the thing about don't go to some tournaments because you just don't feel it to go in it. Sorry for my English.
No, that was great. Really, you're keeping up perfectly, which I'm very impressed by.
I have my traductor right here if I need.
Well, as you've heard, my French is terrible, so thank you very much for making the effort. Cord, do you think we're dropping into smaller and smaller buckets?
We probably are to some degree. Just it's with just the sheer amount of tournament and how popular they are. So if you don't know about the tournament when it gets out, which you're more likely to if it's your local tournament, it's harder to get tickets if you wait around. So it's think it's a simple consequence of everything just being more popular as well.
Now, as people that like their high rankings and like to be thought of as elite Blood Bowlers, as you three are, is there therefore an argument for saying we need to define, say, 10 tournaments a year per country that get double the amount of ranking points, and we'll make those ones the big serious ones? And then everything else can just be a little local tourney for the local people to try their local Blood Bowl.
So we want to introduce having double points since it's not really a thing.
I think we should disassociate gravitas of quality of tournament from ranking points. Let's take an example from our backyard PC.
Yep.
The NAF Championship. There is a huge range of players at that tournament. Some that play once a year. Some a busload of children that are bussed in by Stig, and it's fantastic. Some of the best players in the world, and everything in between. And that is not a deep and quality field, right? So the fact that it is double points, or
it is day
not
2.
double points, thank you, Cor. Well, no, it's not. The fact that it is additional ranking points speaks more to the other brilliant things about that tournament, and that it is a lightning rod for the scene, and less to it is a mega tournament full of mega coaches and great Blood Bowl, and that's okay, and I don't have a problem with that, but it doesn't. I don't think you can fit a model of dishing out ranking points.
But I mean, say Monkey Bowl, Water Bowl, Andy Davo's tournaments have had over 100 people at them. For these seriously large tournaments, couldn't we say, actually, these are the ones that proper rankings will be won at?
But interesting, Monkey Bowl wasn't a 100 people tournament, but you probably had most of Team England coming in a smaller tournament, which is arguably harder to win.
Yeah.
Than...
The best tournament I've ever played at was 20 people in terms of quality. And these things are cyclical, right? Monkey Bowl is going through a hard time at the minute, and Dante's trying to bring it back next year. And maybe the Water Bowl was down to 30 people at one point. We all got food poisoning that year in a terrible sort of out of the way room. So I think it's very difficult to apportion ranking points to this known tournament that's going to be mega forever. It doesn't work like that.
Are we in a situation where we now have too many tournaments going on? Is that ever a possible thing? I went yesterday to one of the ones that High Wycombe is running. They're now running 12 tournaments a year, one a month. And that's just one tournament organizer in one shop in one location. Is there too much Blood Bowl now?
No, there is always a place for more Blood Bowl, but just if you want to, for example, when a French team want to make some trainings, we are not coming to big tournaments because we know that on a 5 match, maybe 2 or 3 if we have to for 48 hours, it would be better to stay with a French team and to make some training, some situation, because sometimes you start a match and then in turn 2 it's over because I have a blitz with my Skaven and 1-0 for me on the offense of the opponent. So we play during 2 hours, but the game is pretty over after 5 or 10 minutes. So I think if you want to make some training, you don't go to big tournaments to have 5 match of hard training against other people. If you want to progress at Blue Ball and become better, you play online, you play with friends with a big level, and you watch some videos, some replay on Fumble, for example.
I mean, I at the last FC I was actually able to attend. I managed, largely through some luck, to beat my good friend Core. I did then try and coach him as to how he should play the next game to ensure that my strength of schedule stayed strong. But sadly, he decided not to, and to lose instead, costing me a place in the final, which I will never forgive him for.
You deserved it from that game.
As elite players, do you sometimes feel that need to coach the people you're playing? If the win's nice and secure, do you try and be helpful and give them some tips, or is that too toxically elite?
If they appear open and interested, then certainly yes.
I wouldn't.
You don't want to be patronising though, or appear patronising.
Sure.
No, I think all of us that sit here wants better Blood Bowl in general, because that's more enjoyable for us as well. There's nothing fun with just running over somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. That's not interesting for any of us. I keep saying I'd rather want to lose a good game than win a bad one.
Olivier, do you offer tips and advice to people?
If I opened a YouTube channel like 1 year before, maybe more, it's to make some to give some advice to other Blood Bowlers in France in French. So I think for me it's I love when after a big match to take a meet a lunch with my opponent and to discuss about the game, about our decision. And I think maybe it's one of the thing I love the most about Blood Bowl, because during 2 days you're like you're just thinking about what how you play, and you discuss about it with your opponent, and you try to progress, but it's not the most important thing, because you just share a moment with the opponent. So I think that was Blood Bowl is really nice.
Now, we are roughly approaching the halfway point. I try not to make sure these go for longer than sort of 2 hours, because that seems way long to me. I know Joe Rogan does 4 hours, but we're not going to ever do that. But I did give you some warnings. I want to do some faster rounds now, and then we'll go back to the list of questions that I have from the good people of the Blood Bowl community. I did warn you that we're going to ask for this one. We've already done the hopes and the fears for the new rule set, but 3 teams. There's 30 currently races available. I want 3 teams that you want to kill, to take out of Blood Bowl entirely, 3 that need a buff, and 3 that could do with a nerf. I've given you some warning on this, so hopefully you should have your lists ready. Let's start with Kur. Which 3 teams would you kill?
Which 3? I want to kill Slan, the current version of Underworld, and 1 random. Let's take gnomes out again. It doesn't need. No snotlings. Take snotlings.
Okay.
Snotlings, Slans, and Underworld.
So Slan, half dead, you'd kill them off entirely. Underworld
should have been killed
and
long time
Snotlings.
ago.
Okay. So not a lover of little tiny strength 1 things.
Yeah.
Olivier, 3 teams to kill.
I think it's gnomes, underworld, and undead.
Undead, controversial choice. And then I've got to ask, I mean, gnomes and underworld, I'm not going to ask for your reasons. I think everyone that's sane hates them. But why undead?
I think I just didn't like them because it's a really a powerful roster with a 2 or 3 mighty blow on the line. No lunar on the mummies. And when I see, for example, all the good things you can do with necromantics, I think undead are just necromantics overpowered, and I don't like them. So you asked me to kill 1 team,
Yeah,
I kill undead.
fine. That's an interesting answer. I mean, if I'm going to get corrected here, no doubt, but the history, as I understand it, is that Blood Bowl wanted to do away with undead, which were originally a sort of hammer house of horrors. They had, werewolves available through a star. They had mummies. They had Frankenstein. And there's something else I'm missing there, isn't there? But they basically had the full lineup of the Hammer House of Horror monsters available. And then Games Workshop decided to split them and to have Khemri, to have Necromantic, and to have vampires. So we had them all covered, and the idea was to get rid of undead and have those 3 options instead. But they were so popular with the fan base that the fan base would not let them die. Do you not? Not for you. Okay, Phil, your 3. What 3 are on the chopping block?
Undead, bad for Skaven, famously as well. So I wonder if that feeds into anything. My 3 are Underworld. Always hated Underworld, even before it was cool. Old World Alliance. What is the?
Oh yeah,
They're just joyless, absolutely joyless.
yeah.
And
I
Halflings.
sorry, Phil. I will kill our World Alliance before all the rest.
Okay.
Perfect. Absolutely joyless.
Yeah.
And Halflings, because they're incredibly dull. They're stunty without the fun.
Yeah, I didn't see the need for gnomes. I'm sorry. I know people love painting them. I don't see the need for them. Underworld were also on my list, and also Slan. I think Slan should have died. I don't see why the NAF's keeping them alive, and I think that's only going to get more and more complex as time goes by. So I think it's time we just let them go. I'm sorry for all those people that have Slan teams. I have a team that can be, they're Cossacks, so they can be Norse or Slan, but I just think it's time to let them go. 3 teams that you think might need a buff. Let's go reverse order. Phil, 3 teams to buff.
Goblins. Everybody loves goblins. They're the most fun stunties, and the meme is that they're nerfed every time. So let's give them a little buff. Nurgle. I think Nurgle are really interesting, and they really suffer from being really, really slow, and they can't even do the Route 1 Claw Mighty Bow piling on thing anymore. So they've got nothing apart from a really interesting big guy at the moment. And nobility. I love nobility, and let's make them cheap because they're fun, and it wouldn't hurt anybody for nobility to be 5% better than they are now.
I think to start with making them affordable would be the buff I would give them. Olivier, 3 teams to buff.
I think I will take the 2 teams from the base box edition 2020. Black Orc and Imperial Nobility are 2 teams who are taken by a lot of players, and actually I think they are not played by so much players, so they need some buff to be played. And 3rd team to buff, maybe Pro Elves, to be a little more competitive, and then you have 4 elf teams who can be played at top level by every players without cheering.
Okay.
Different tier.
Was that 3?
Yes. Black Orc, Imperial Nobility, and Pro Elf.
I missed the Imperial Nobility. I spaced out. Core, 3 teams to buff.
Let's do it quick. I can go with all those teams. All of them will be on mine as well. Goblins, Nobilities, Black Orcs.
Goblins, Black Orcs, and High Elves for me. I love my High Elves. I find them a bit dull. I just think they need a redesign that makes them a bit more interesting.
I reach you on the High Elf, and I forget Pro Elf.
Okay. 3 teams to nerf. Now, famously in this rule set, I would argue that Wood Elves did get a slight nerfing. Of all the teams, lots of teams got minor little changes, but I think Wood Elf really did drop, notably. What other teams do you think could have the nerf hammer applied to them? Core.
Amazons.
Okay.
I think mainly Amazons at the moment. I think now Underworld has already gotten nerfed. I think the new Amazons are really, really good.
Okay, any others?
What else do we got? I don't really think it's not too bad in the top. Maybe I would love to make this game in one turn slightly worse, but you cannot do that without doing a lot of other things. So.
Yeah, because of course any change we make messes with the whole meta, which does worry me slightly. Olivier, 3 teams to nerf.
Yes, maybe a little nerf on vampires with gaze, which need 3+ and not 2+. I think little.
3+.
Yes. Yeah. And I think I will choose maybe Gutter Scavens because they need. It's really too easy to make a 1 turn right now, and so. It's a little kill of the game, I think.
So, am I hearing the world's best, most toxically elite Skaven coach say that maybe Skaven need a tiny little nerf here?
Yeah, that's hard for me to say that, but really, I remember not this year, but year before, German Team Ball, which I faced a lot of strong opponents, and I think 3 times on 6 rounds, I get 1 turn to change the result of the round. So it's maybe a little too easy. So yes, I think the Gutter Runner goes to 8 and not 9.
I just can't see how anyone would ever object to that. Phil?
I don't think it's a problem, actually. But anyway, so some repetition from me. I think we've got to be a bit guarded about nerfing things just because they're good, because something's always going to be best. But Amazons were on my list as well. They are more interesting now, but they are also just, I mean, if you're playing something that's guard dependent, all of that guard and the defensive guys just get stuck in, and you're really in trouble almost immediately. I think vampires were on my list because they were beautiful and elegant and joyous when they were crap, but they could do a thing. And the thing that they do now is crazy. They're not brilliant, but they're almost too good to have their shtick. And the last thing on my list was Snotlings. I think probably the best stunty team. I'd like them to be proper stunties. I'd like them to be down there with goblins and ogres, and of course the star thing sort of breaks it a bit. But I think Snotlings are a bit too good. I think.
I mean, in general, I do think all stunties could go back to being stunties in my head. I don't see what the problem was with having a collection of races that are harder. And that if someone wins the Stunty Cup, you're going, well, that's really well played. Nowadays, you tend to say, okay, so did you have Morg or Griff? And that, to me, that's a huge difference. And it's kind of a loss from the game. But maybe I'm just toxically elite and old, and perhaps I don't want change. My 3 to be nerfed might be a little controversial. I definitely think vampires need to lose the 2+ Hypno Cheat. I think that's just too strong. I mean, beautiful as they are, maybe you'd need to rebalance with something a little else. But I do think 3+ is a better way to go with the Hypnotic Gaze. I like the new design. I like the variety in vampires. I just think that's not a great answer. Is the 2+ Hypno Gaze? It can just destroy entire teams in a single turn. You only need to roll, just reasonably well, not even great dice to do so. I would also like to see a very mild nerf to Amazons. It's one of the reasons I'm coaching them at Euro Bowl is they were available to me, so I thought I haven't coached them yet in 2020, but I want to give them a go. But from everything I hear, they are still coming in way too strong at times. So I'm interested to see what I think once I've coached them. But yeah, I do hear that needs doing, so that was one on my list. My third one is Dark Elves. And this is very specific. I mean, I've had a couple of very successful years running Dark Elf, and I do love coaching them. They've got so many positionals, and there's so many that you just don't need. I know assassins are much more common on the continent than they are in the UK, but you hardly ever see them on the UK scene. And I just think 4 blitzers. I mean, I've said it before. No one's going to be surprised if they're listening to the podcast. I would take 2 blitzers away from Dark Elves, and I would give them to High Elves, and then I would take 2 catchers away from High Elves. And I think you'd have more individual elves that way. I think High Elves would be the armoured elves, Pro Elves would be the fast, catchy elves, Wood Elves would be the dancer elves, and Dark Elves would be the dirty tricks with assassins and witches. And I think you'd have more individuality in your 4 elf races that way. So that would be my nerfs and buffs that I would throw into Blood Bowl. Now, we have had a question here that I did warn you would come up, at least some of you. So, Tommy Fury and Molly May, whose side are you on? And do you even understand the question? Now, there's a generation to whom this is as important as Prince Charles and Princess Di. This is their big thing. I would imagine Olivier is young enough to maybe know who I mean, but of course there is the country issue. Olivier, have you any idea who those people are?
I made my work and my homework, and then I just go see who was your fashion victim.
Yeah, who are they?
Yeah,
Exactly.
but when I see you were talking about Taylor Swift, I was like, I just come with my girlfriend to see the Queen at Zurich in July, so there is no way I don't choose Taylor.
Okay, Taylor Swift. Purplegoo, how do you feel about the Molly May and Tommy Fury situation?
Well, I quite like boxing, so it annoys me
He's
that
not a boxer, though,
Tommy,
is he?
that he's not.
No,
Well,
it's not Tyson
exactly
Fury.
that. It annoys me that he's not a boxer and he takes up too much screen time.
But he
So
beats
not
up
him.
YouTube stars
Molly
for
May.
money. That's not boxing.
Yeah, it doesn't do it for me. I don't like it. So I prefer proper boxing. So
So are you a Molly
May,
May fan then? Are you more on her side?
absolutely. I don't know who she is, but Team Molly.
She's a very nice middle-class girl from Hitchin
Excellent.
who met
I
him
like
on
him
Love
all the
Island.
more. All right, okay.
And now has 10 million followers on Instagram. Instagram,
It's
TikToky
almost as many as you.
reels, or whatever it is. I don't pretend to understand them all completely. Core, Molly May or Tommy Fury? Whose side are you on?
I didn't do my homework. I have freaking no clue who you're talking about. I just tried to Google it. And I still really don't understand it. So, happy days. It's all fine.
Okay, well, I have the right answer, and all of you have missed it. I'm on the side of the baby. There's a baby in all of this that's getting forgotten. Yeah, Tommy Fury and Molly May have had a baby. How do you not know this? Do you not live in the world with the rest of us?
Is
And
this the
after,
bit that you're going to clip up for TikTok for likes and
absolutely, yes.
subscribes?
Blood
Right,
Bowlers
okay,
talk,
good.
Molly May and Tommy Fury. This will get
Yeah,
us
yeah.
the TikTok
This will be the
generation
one.
joining in.
I need to ask the teenage if they know who it is.
I bet you they will. I 100% bet you the teenagers in your house will know who Tommy Fury and Molly May are. And if you tell them that all you worry about is the baby, they'll understand. See, absolutely no one in the chat knows what I'm talking about either, so that's brilliant. There we are. I've managed to be younger than all of you. Okay, now that was my only silly question for this episode, so let's go back to some sensible ones. What have we got next? Let's turn over to the more sensible side. Here's one to get us going. This is definitely from the Toxic Elite. We need to hear what the Toxic Elite think about this. We have a question. I'm going to name them. It's from Ms. Roguemerk. And they have asked us, I have often said BB seems to attract Dunning-Kruger effect level players, like no other game I have played. So now that I've enraged most of the community, here is the multi-part question for the Toxic Elite. Why do Blood Bowl coaches, by and large, think they are better than they are? For those of you that don't know what the Dunning-Kruger effect is, that is pretty much sums it up. People that think they are better than they are. So that's the first part of the question. And then how can we as a community get to a point where we can speak honestly of such things without shattering the egos of all the hometown heroes who have only ever compared themselves to their mates? So, who wants to take this one on for me? Core, you're smiling. That says you've an answer ready.
I could repeat chat. Isn't that just how humans works in general?
Well, I mean, yes, but Ms. Roguemerk says that there's more of it in Blood Bowl than any other gaming community they have come across.
It's the only gaming community I know, but it's definitely not different from Sport, where I come from, where it's exactly the same.
Do you not think self-assessment in Blood Bowl is a tough thing to do?
It's a thing for human beings, period.
Okay.
Sport is not different.
So you reject that it is worse in Blood Bowl than anywhere else?
I don't think it's worse in Blood Bowl, no.
Olivier, do you think Blood Bowl players tend to overrate themselves, and how can we break that to them without upsetting them?
I think in my local league we have a really good thing about this. It's in Latin and it says like Blood Bowl coach lose in bad face and win with arrogance and just because he's better than the other coach. And I think when you and it's for me it's a real thing for all coaches. Who, it's the first game of Blood Bowl or it's 100. It's the same thing because when you lost a game, I think you are logically affected by dice and what you missed. So I think there is some toxicity in losing at Blood Bowl, and you can't. It's hard to 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 analyze the game you just lost and say the opponent was better. I don't heard a lot of time that wow you was better than me. I lost because of this, and it's more like oh you dice me. Bah.
So is that unrealistic, or is it just self-defense, do you think?
I think it's maybe. I think it's more about self-defense because you just analyze what you missed and you forget about you you when you have good dice or when you make one or
Yeah.
two casualty.
Yeah, no one remembers the one-die pals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Phil, do we have more Dunning-Kruger sufferers in Blood Bowl than elsewhere?
I don't know because I don't know. I don't play any other games. So Olivier's right in that there is that self-defense. The minute you've lost, oh, that was all due to dice. I'm a genius. It can't possibly have been
Yeah.
me because I'm brilliant. But I think if you were to genuinely carry on thinking that all the time, then you're not going to get any better. And if you believe yourself, if you're high on your own supply and you believe yourself to be brilliant, then you've already peaked and you're already on the way down and you're not getting any better. You should always be working on something. I think Blood Bowl is a game where if you are a big fish in a small pond, if you went to your local shop, Dave, that you were describing earlier, and you smashed all of those coaches, you would get progressively worse and you would believe yourself to be brilliant.
Yeah.
And you would turn up
Still
on the
believe
internet and
myself to be
go,
brilliant.
thank you, yes, of course. And you would turn up on the internet and you would say, Dave, I am the king. I'm Dave. I am the king of the Scout Hut. And then some people on the internet would take great joy, or a better tournament would take great joy in explaining to you that you're not the king of anything more than your massive pond, your small pond.
I am the
that
king
you
of
are.
Bromley. That's a title I hold dear.
There you go.
Bromley is a very small suburb of South London. Is it the case, we slightly have edged around this, therefore that for you three, you are as good as you think you are? I mean, the NAF rankings prove it. Is the title of Toxic Elite really for the people like me that are, a good step down from there, but still perhaps, I don't, but still perhaps think they're as good as you? Is that where the Toxic Elite comes from? It's people that are pretty good, so it's been said in the chat, people that are pretty good but don't quite get the results they feel they should be. Is that really where the toxicity in Blood Bowl sits?
I don't think that person exists. I don't think that class of person exists. I would encourage anybody who wants to get better to try and get better and not be shy about explaining that they're trying to get better because that's how we learn. I think too often, especially in the UK, I don't know what it's like in France or other countries, too often in the UK, people trying to do well has been kind of jokingly, but not really jokingly, sort of spurned or mocked. I think that's the wrong attitude. If you want, you can get whatever you like out of Blood Bowl. You can attempt to win 50 best painted. You can be the Stunty Cup winner. You can do all kinds of things. One of the things you can do is try and do well, and that should be as encouraged as anything else.
This is an interesting question for Olivier then, based on that. You just made me realise, Phil, that there's a phrase we use in Blood Bowl, and I guess in lots of areas in British life, where we use an insult to people when we call them a try-harder. If you say, oh, they try hard, that's seen as an insult. Would that be the same in France?
Oh yeah. There is a in France there is the other side where tryharders call some tournaments kermesse. So it's like a party for kids, and it's like okay, it's a party for kids this tournament. So we just don't go in this tournament because the rule set isn't interesting for tryharders, for example. And so yes, there is some maybe fracture, some bridge between some players. And to I just analyze some things about losing and saying to the other player, I just had bad dice. But I think there is some facility for the coach who win to say, hey, I just have a better dice than you, and no, oh, mate, I just play better than you at this turn, and in this situation, and that's why I win the game. I won the game. So maybe there is some toxicity out in not saying to the other coach the small details where the game just the game just decide about this. I think we
Um,
can find some.
Core and Phil, do you tell people how you won, or do you just say, well, thank you, I had the better dice?
Me?
No, I'm taking your point and throwing it to the other two.
Yes, I think it depends of the other coach. If you want to know about the match, I'm going to analyze his depart position and everything about the game and his strategy on the 8 turns and other thing like this. But if is just like you have a lot of chance of a lot of luck, and I understand why you're number one. I'm like, okay, I have a lot of good dice. Thank you very much for the match, and see you.
Phil?
I agree with that. Yeah, I think in the heat of the moment, straight after the game, I think it's very difficult to have that conversation. I think that is a over lunch or in the evening job, because everybody's the hero in their own story, right? To a certain extent, myself included, right? I am a flawed human being, and at the end of the game, if I've not won, I'll think, it'll take me a bit of time to cool down and reflect on what happened. And maybe there are better people than me to have that conversation with at the end of the game. But I think with a little bit of distance, I think it's always easier to have that chat about, well, actually, if your strategy from turn one had been, I don't know, if you'd been less aggressive or if you'd gone this way and then that way, perhaps you'd not been in a situation where this thing would have happened and led to that player dying or whatever. That's an easier conversation in hindsight than it is directly after the game. I'm much more likely just to say, enjoyed that, thanks, mate. Yes, I was quite lucky. Speak later, I think.
Okay. Cool.
I think it depends. It depends on how the game has been. It also depends on how the talk has been during the game. Because that's like I played one there today, and at least one of them we had a chat afterwards. So it depends, I think, who much more about the opponent than anything else, and how the chat had been on the way. But a lot of games where I just like Phil said, it's not really worth the time at that point.
Yeah, notably that one time I beat you, you didn't congratulate me or anything. You just called me French for celebrating when you snaked. But Olivier didn't seem to hear that, so I think we've got away with it. Let me see what else we've got here. Now, just a very quick one here. Someone has asked, as this is the elite of Blood Bowl, they want to know how are they going to beat 8-skill Amazons at the Euros? We've talked about how strong Amazons are. Some of them are going to have 8 skills at the Euros. How is this person? This is from Frosting Narrow 4123. Has asked, how do they beat 8-skill Amazons at the Euros? Olivier.
You're going to have to think about it. Yeah, go on, Olivier.
I think the best way is I have some aspirations skills with wood elf, dark elf, scavens, and Amazons can't chase the ball. So you can use your 10 guys to fight the 11th Amazons, and use your big guys, use your mobility to make some fight. And in defense, you can try to put some pressure on the ball. I think it depends on the kick, but Amazons are not so fast, and then with necromantics or undead, you can put some pressure on the ball carrier at the start of the half, and you can try some things. And Amazons are really they have all dodge in series, but if you take one by one 3 dice, block, mighty blow, something like this, it could goes on the good side. For me, Amazons are already top 4 of the meta, but vampires as vampires, scavens, or dark elves, so it's not unbeatable.
Phil, you've had your thinking time.
Well, I think what Olivier's demonstrated is that you're going to have to think about it.
Yeah.
And I don't say that lightly, right? Because I turned up to a practice game with my Necromantic against Liam Thulian's Amazons. And he had clearly been playing Amazons all year and thinking about how he was going to approach the fixture. And he was taking 30-second turns. The players were arriving in the right places, and I was in a pickle, needing snookers almost immediately. And since then, I've had a good think about how I'm going to do it, right? So I think Eurobowl, especially because of the amount of practice that people have been doing and because of the importance of the tournament, I absolutely think it's worth thinking out the fixtures you're likely to face and how you're going to approach it with your specific roster.
Right, so maybe having a different plan depending on exactly what you're facing.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah, I think
that's
it's very. I think it's a lot more difficult just to rock up and play normal Blood Bowl at
yeah,
this
very
tournament more
solid
than any other.
advice. Cool. How do you beat Amazons?
It always helps to be lucky, right?
For sure.
It's a like again. There's no way. You cannot put a plan together. Like I said, they have some weakness, and it's still not that fast, and they still do most on 3+. That's what you have. Um, that's still the weakness.
Yeah.
They're just a lot easier to play around it now.
Yes, and this is how not toxically elite I am. I have already told you I'm playing Amazons at the Euro Bowl, at the Euro Open, and hence I'm giving people advice into how to beat me. But I would suggest exactly the same things, that they're much lower on speed than people think, and actually AG3 doesn't dodge away even with dodge as reliably as elves do. So going into the fight, basing them up, limiting their movement can really actually cause them all sorts of problems. No Amazon coach wants to start their turn needing a 1 in 9 fail to get anything moving at all, because that's going to fail. In a game, there's going to be some times where your very first move therefore fails. So there are strategies, there are options, but yes, don't just treat them as any other team, but actually think of a strategy and put it into action. And if you think you're up against, I mean, just like Phil was saying, when you're playing someone who is either a lot better at you than Blood Bowl, or with a race that you think has got a big advantage over you, my advice would be, recognise that. Recognise the situation you think you're in and change up how you play. There's no point doing what you've always done if your expected outcome is to lose. Try something different. Go hard or foul or base a lot. Just try anything that isn't what you would normally do and see if that gets you the result. Obviously, have a think about what would be successful against that roster. Don't base up, for example, dwarfs if they've got 6 guard and a couple of mighty bows. That probably won't go well. But things like Amazons, lots of them are unskilled, lots of them don't dodge away as well as we all think they do. Then, yeah, find a new strategy, try something different and see if it works for you. Now, as I have a look at the questions we do have left, anything from you guys that you wanted to ask me or each other whilst we're on, it is your time to be here too.
Do you think that multi-rerolls is a good thing for the game or not?
That what, sorry?
The possibility to reroll multiple times in one turn.
Yeah, okay, so one of the biggest changes from the 2020 rule set was multiple reroll use in a turn. Phil's touched on that already earlier in the podcast. We've all had time to settle into it now. Do we think it's been good for Blood Bowl? Cool.
Again?
Has multiple reroll use in a single turn been good for Blood Bowl?
If you take away the turn 8 and 16, I do personally enjoy it. I kind of wanted something like you could use more in the earlier turns and less towards the end of the drives. But in general, I think it's more enjoyable by now. But
I mean, I've settled into it. I'm still not sure it doesn't actually penalise newer players more.
it does. I'm pretty sure it does.
And I'm never crazy on rules that seem to be doing that.
But it's also a newer player that prefer it, so they don't know it penalized them.
Phil?
I think it's the biggest thing that's been leading to this observation that I made, and it is an observation rather than data. I've not been through everybody's stats, but the better players seem to be winning more in this edition, and I think the biggest part of that is multiple rerolls, and you use them. I do think it's made the game slightly less dramatic, and that's a shame. So, I played a new player earlier this year, and I had a very easy 2 dice on the ball with a couple of go for it's, failed the first go for it, and multiple rerolls. I can just keep going. Fantastic, doesn't matter. That drama element, I think it's a bit of a shame to have lost that knife edge moment of using a reroll early in your turn and then thinking, oh crap.
Do I continue with the plan or do I not? Yeah.
Yeah.
Not much of a change for Core. He famously would always just carry on with the plan anyway, whether he'd used his rerolls or not. But yeah, I do think it's been a change. Olivier, how you asked the question? What do you think?
I think it's a good thing to the game because it changed the way we manage our rerolls, and it add some spectacular things to Blood Bowl. So it's more easy right now to make some before. some actions were really hard to put on, and now with 2 or 3 rolls you can make some magic in the turn way easily, and I think it's a good thing for new players because it's spectacular, and you're like, wow, what an action! It's crazy. So maybe for the new players, it's interesting, and for the game it's better. But I didn't hear before the argument of Phil about better player win more with more rolls. So it's really interesting argument.
Is it
Sorry.
also, and I'm going to have to, name the bear in the corner of the room, or the elephant, isn't it, in the corner of the room? It is particularly useful for one-turners, isn't it? He asked the Skaven coach.
Absolutely. It's already and it change for bad things Blood Bowl, because now if I take 1 or 2 men Ratmen out, I'm like, okay, maybe I just try to survive to the rest of the half, and wait for turn 8 with 2 or 3 rolls, and I have a lot of situation where my one turn was like 55 or 60% to go. So it's maybe too much for the game.
Yeah,
And
I mean, which is why you were
Yeah.
talking about maybe nerfing gutters, because
yeah,
we talked about sort of killing the natties, which were only ever a league thing anyway, not of course in NAF, which is natural one-turners for those that aren't familiar with the phrase. But the multiple rerolls do mean that, yeah, I mean, it's not only Skaven, Underworld as well. Particularly now they don't get swarming. I've faced an Underworld team and they just didn't play Blood Bowl at all. They sniped occasional pieces on my drive, but showed no interest in the ball. Once I'd secured it, they just didn't care. And they were clearly saving the whole team and all of the rerolls for the one-turn reply. Which just
not
didn't feel
yeah.
like Blood Bowl to me. But then maybe I'm out of date. Maybe that's me being toxically elite. I don't
I,
know.
I think you're right.
Okay, what is the route to becoming an elite Blood Bowler like you guys? I mean, I've already said, is it just the number of tourneys? But there must also be a mindset. Are you just naturally born with the mind of Blood Bowl, or is it something you felt you trained yourself into? And if so, how was that done? Phil, are you just
I
naturally a
think
gifted Blood Bowler?
the very opposite. I'm naturally rubbish at everything the first few times I do it. So
Okay.
if I'm playing a new board game with my peers, I will often come last, dead last, long way last to begin with. The thing about Blood Bowl that it caught my attention and I became obsessed with it, and I thought about how I was going to get better. And I think you see this curve with people trying to get better, where first they get the tactics right. So do the free things first, do the hard things last, all that kind of stuff. You got that little bit of a curve, and then you get some simple concepts like caging or screening, or you know the strategy bit comes second, I guess, is the thing that I'm getting to. And I think the jump from good player to very good player is in that strategy jump. So you see people, I've already called out the double banking with elves. You see people stop there because they found a thing that works sometimes and they stick with it and they never think about where to go next. Or the withdrawn offense, so the dackering, that's going to work for a 7 or 8 out of 10 player, and they're going to get stuck on that because it works. Or picking claw palm in the old rules and leaning into that, and that being your entire strategy. So I think thinking about how to structure drives, where you're ending up, what you're trying to achieve as you're going, I think that's the jump.
If you think you're in one
I
of those
think.
little cul-de-sacs that's working well, but it does feel like this is how I play now, what would you advise? What, get out of it, do other things, or?
I think you've got to unpick it. I think so. I think most good players that I speak to, and present company might be different, find that playing online is not as good as playing live for thinking things through. You get distracted, you don't care as much because it's online, etc. But watching replays of other people is a great tool. And the question you should always be asking yourself at the end of a turn is, how many questions have I asked? Right? So if I'm walling off, if I'm double banking off with elves, I've asked one question. Now that might be the right question to ask, but if you're just doing it naturally, then you might not be asking the right question. So you might be giving all the tempo over to your opponent. Your opponent's got all of the active Blood Bowl that's happening, and all you're doing is walling off.
Yeah.
You have got 8 turns in which to ask as many questions as possible, one of which your opponent won't be able to answer. Is that the only question you want to ask?
Yeah,
So
I mean,
I find myself even now slapping myself and saying, shit, have I just done something on autopilot? Whereas I could have been doing something more here.
yeah. I often find if I'm under a lot of pressure, obviously the first thing you're looking at on any turn is how do I solve the problems that have been set to me. But if all I'm doing is solving those problems, if I'm not setting any problems back to the opponent, then I'm just asking for more problems to be set next turn again. So as well as there has to be that balance between me solving the problems you've set me and me saying, actually, here's some things for you to worry about and think about. So you can't just spend the whole of next turn thinking, how do I mess his life and his drive up? Or how do I make sure that my drive continues seamlessly? I think there has to be that balance. And sometimes I will give up maybe the ideal defensive shape just to solve, to put a couple of questions to the opponent they have to think about. What's that piece doing? Or how do I deal with this piece that, is looking like it might get surfed or whatever? Just because anything that stops them thinking, how do I just mess with him and set him problems, is limiting the number of problems I'm going to face in the next turn. Olivier, how'd you get good? Were you born good or did you get good?
I was really bad at start at Blood Bowl, and I was a little lucky because I was in the local league with Carac, Justicium, Grunin, some big French coach,
Yeah,
and I want to learn. So and they took time to learn me how to become better. But I just the only video in my channel. Which is in English is how to become world number one at Blood Bowl, and it's like in a few parts. I think you have to find your style. If you like to play elves or you prefer to play orcs or undead. I think after you have to find your roster and what you like in this roster. Like you like to play a lot of guards or you like to play a mighty blow and sneaky jit or something like this. There is the most important thing about Blood Bowl. It's don't blame the dice. Don't blame the dice. Just
yeah,
it's a game about dice. But if you take if you just don't interest yourself in the results of the dice, then you become a lot better to play the game because you are not like I lost because I made a one or I won because I made a six. It's okay, I won because my strategies worked or I lost because my strategy didn't work. So I
yeah.
think that's important things. And in Blood Bowl, you have to climb, you have to grind, and you have to make trainings. And you have to go to tournaments and to test yourself. So for me, there is a lot of thinking about Blood Bowl to become better, and a lot of practicing to just to use what you think you know about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been playing Blood Bowl a long time. I guess when I started, I had that attitude of, if I'm good at this, it shouldn't be hard work. I shouldn't have to try. And then I realised just how incredibly arrogant and stupid that was. And realised if I actually wanted to get any better at the game, I had to do that thing of becoming someone that tries hard, that does sometimes look at replays and say, okay, where did that go wrong? And one of the first things I came across was that. Now, Dionysian, who we've had on the podcast before, famously says there are no dice in Blood Bowl. Now, there obviously are. I recognise you want to come in, Olivier. You don't have to hold your hand up. I can spot from people's facial clues. I'm not a
I just
teacher.
I just one more thing
Sure,
to say. Oh, I forget it. Fuck.
that's all right. Come
Uh,
back in as and when. He
yes.
always said there
Okay.
are no dice. Now, obviously, there are dice, but I think the point he's making is exactly what you're making. That any time you start talking about the dice, you're missing where either you didn't need to roll those dice, or you're rolling too many dice, or your strategy could have been better. And also, results-based analysis isn't the best way of looking at Blood Bowl. When I coach people, one of the things I always talk about is if you're doing the right things, then you're maybe trying to move from, I don't know, whatever your win percentage is, if you're trying to up it by 10%, that isn't going to see you get a response in every single game by doing things better. To get a 10% bump means that one game in 10 you're going to win instead of lose. Or perhaps two you're going to draw instead of lose. And that will give you that 10% bump in win rate, but it's not going to happen in every single game. And sometimes you'll do all the right things, and it'll still always go wrong. So you can't necessarily analyze the outcome. You must analyze the process. Am I doing the right things? Am I putting myself in the right places? If I'm getting 8 dice on the ball and not getting a POW, I can blame the dice, or I can say, actually, I did all the right things, it just didn't work right. And I can be happy with my performance, even if not with the outcome. I think that was the big change for me, was to look at how I'm doing things, not at what results I'm getting out of them. And you know, I'm
I
not number one at
remember.
NAF, but I did get better than I was by thinking in that way.
I think you're right, and I remember what I want to say. I think I don't know for the choosers, but I may be actually the number one. But I think there is a lot of improvement possible in my games, and when I see my replays and when I see how I play a game, it's really unusual for me to say, okay, I just played a perfect game and I can't play better. So I think there is a if you want to become better at Blood Bowl and you want to be part of the toxic elite, you can do it. Really, it's possible because a lot of people don't optimize. I don't know
Yep.
if it goes for you. The all the placement and all the way they play. So it's there is a place.
Yeah, I would. I've always said I don't think anyone plays perfect Blood Bowl. I think any turn of yours you look at, there's usually someone that could have been in a slightly better square. And when you find an absolutely perfect square for a piece, that brings me such joy. I do love good positioning when it really works. And I think that is something you can learn just by analysing where you put things and where other people put things. And
I
sometimes,
think
I remember I had one lovely piece of feedback. Someone looked at a few of my dwarf replays and said, you did this move on turn 3 and I couldn't work out why you were doing it or what possible use it was. But by turn 5, I realised absolutely why you'd needed that dwarf to be where it
mm,
was. And it's that sort of thinking, I think, that can really, really help. It's looking at something you perhaps don't understand, perhaps some positioning that doesn't make sense to you, and trying to work out what that player is doing and why, and how you could learn from it. Core, were you born brilliant? I mean, you have a body
um,
the size of a planet, presumably a brain the size of one too. Surely you would just came out of the womb able to do Blood Bowl.
I'm opposite Phil. I was about to say, I generally do well in new games when I pick up new games, um, especially when that's to some degree of pattern and understanding. Which is, I was about to say, I know online game is really hard to keep focus on, but it also allowed you to play a lot more games. And Blood Bowl I wasn't particularly great either, like because it's such a hard game. Somebody had to tell somebody else to start picking me for Euroball famously back in the days because it's really hard to change that outlook. But
Hmm.
I think one thing we can use online too is pattern recognition and positioning because you just can your volume of games is just higher than if you play tabletop occasionally. So I do think it's useful also to play online um, because the volume of games just allows you to do more
Yeah.
and try more things.
But volume in itself, I don't think achieves much. I think that volume has to come
No, but
with.
it's no, but it still it allows you to do it. Which
Yeah,
like if you only play tables, like you just the chance to experience more things is it just allows you to experience more in a shorter point of time. And when I
absolutely.
started playing Blood Bowl, I played a tournament maybe one per month if I was lucky, and that was the Blood Bowl I played at some point in time. Like that's 6 games. It's nothing um, when you try to build a base.
Yes, I mean, if I face someone on tabletop that's played maybe 40 games, I mean, they're going to know their Blood Bowl. They're going to understand what they're doing. But compared to someone that's played 2,000 online, if that 2,000 has been part of their learning and that, there's a good chance they've got better, I would on balance think that person is probably going to be slightly better. Um, this has been boiled down by Crathman88 into a much simpler question for you. Obviously, this question has been done to death, but nevertheless, what's the one single piece of advice you would give someone to help them to become a more competent player? So it's a random someone, we know nothing about them. I'm going to allow you one single sentence that you think will stick in the mind. What would your advice be to just any Blood Bowler to help them become more competent? Who wants to come in first on this? Who's got a nice pithy sentence to drop? Olivier,
Don't blame the dice. Stay
lovely.
with
Don't blame the dice. I can sign up to that one.
But don't be scared of rolling them either.
Don't be scared of rolling dice. I think that's also a good thing. Yeah, I mean, Barney in the chat was just saying when I said, sometimes people are rolling way too many dice, that actually sometimes people roll too few. The opposite, as you start to learn and grow, is sometimes you just become very risk averse. And it's a game where risk is what wins sometimes. Phil.
Oh, I think don't be afraid to try, right? So Olivier spoke very eloquently there on thinking his game isn't perfect. I know my game isn't perfect either, right?
Yeah.
I'm still working on things, and it would be very easy for any of us on this call just to stop trying, right? But that's not how you get better.
It's one of the things that's kept me in Blood Bowl over
Yeah.
20 years is I still think I'm learning. I'm still hoping to get good at this one day. And I still think I'm on that journey. I still learn every time I play, every tournament I go to, every time I'm online. I'm looking for, okay, what more can I do? What more can I learn about this? How do I try to get better? Consequently, unfortunately, I have to say to Pat Knizasek, I just don't think it's possible to answer your question. He's basically asked, they're very new at Blood Bowl, only a couple of hundred games played, mostly on Fumble. What other game would someone play a couple of 100-hour-long games and say, I'm still very new? I think that's interesting in itself in terms of Blood Bowl and what it requires of us. But you've noticed that most of the Blood Bowl related socials, that the elite tend to speak very well of the Bonehead podcast as a community, but not the Bonehead podcast as players. Now, in the intro to this, I did say we would talk about the Bonehead podcast. I've made people wait an hour and 47 minutes for it. So, what do you all make of the Bonehead podcast? I have famously said that I think their tactical advice is often amusing, but I think they're a lovely bunch of people. I think their production value is great. I think it's beautifully presented. It's incredibly regular content that he cranks out at a rate of knots no one matches. I think they're a huge and important part of the community, and I know particularly a lot of newer players, as Pat Knizasek is, find it incredible to have that level of constant content coming at them. I think the Bonehead podcast are great. I'd love to have them on the show. I have asked them on, and hopefully post Euro Bowl, I'm going to circle back around to try and get that episode to happen. But my opinion may not be your opinion, because I do gently mock them every time they're mentioned. That is fair. I do that. That is me. But then, as Phil says, I mock him. So, what's your view of the Bonehead pod? And I love him as a human being and as a Blood Bowler. I just mock everything. That's who I am. What's your view of the Bonehead podcast? Are you aware of it, and do you have a view upon it? Cool.
I know it exists. I've never listened to an episode, so I cannot say.
Very diplomatic. You know it's existed, but you have no view as you've never taken part. Olivier,
But
are
I've
you
met
aware of
them.
it?
I've met them. They're lovely
No,
people.
They
sorry.
are lovely people. No, it's all in English, so it hasn't crossed your radar.
No.
And Phil.
I don't consume any Blood Bowl content on the internet, this included. So, but I think it's hilarious that they live in your head rent free. I think that's brilliant.
I mean, they live in
So
all
they're
of
my
our heads.
favourites
You never
because
go
of
on
that.
YouTube. You never get thousands of Bonehead podcast videos recommended to you.
No, I don't. YouTube's for children. I'm not.
Okay,
Not
well, there we
interested.
are. I said I would try and ask it, and I have. The other part to Pat's question is, do any of us are able to recommend or do a series of YouTubes on how to get good at Blood Bowl? It's such an incredibly complex game to learn. If you don't happen to be part of a league or a club, how are you expected to learn Blood Bowl? Any advice on how to learn Blood Bowl or a YouTube they should check out?
If they know
Olivier?
about French, there is my YouTube channel where I try to explain my way to play, because I'm just I try some Twitch, but I didn't like it because I have a lot of things to say and I didn't need any people to ask me some
So the
questions.
problem was all the
So
other people on Twitch,
yeah, absolutely. So I'm like
the
I
toxic
put my
non-elite.
absolutely. So I'm like I just start my game and I'm start speaking about all the things I have in mind. So why I'm starting to go in one side, why I'm trying to all in, because I will know I will not have any other window, the better window. So I think really I make a good content in French, but maybe there is subtitles. I don't know for English, and I really make a lot of videos, maybe 2 or 3 by week. So I have a lot of good returns in French on some progress they made because of my video. So if I think I just watch some guides of Andy Davo on YouTube in English, and that was really good because you can't watch a video is really more easy and fast, like play a game on Blood Bowl 3 or Fumble, and it could when you heard some good players telling what they are doing and why. I think that's a good thing to progress at Blood Bowl and to try yourself the next game.
Okay, I mean, I agree. I've had a question from the chat. Thulian says, have you considered or are you aware of translated subtitles enabled on your YouTube videos?
I don't know if they work in English, and I just tried one video on how to become better at Blood Bowl, but really I made a lot of efforts to speak in English with you. I think I understand well English, but when I have to speak, it's I have a lot of a let. I don't have a lot of vocabulary, so it's hard for me.
Well, Olivia, take it from me. Your English has been fantastic tonight. Better than some people I've had
Oh,
on whose English is their first language. So I haven't struggled to understand you at all. I think you've been absolutely excellent. So congratulations and well done. Phil, I know that YouTube is obviously for children. And yes, and thank you again to his partner, who I know has been a massive support. So thank you for your
Hero
passive
behind the
help on the
scenes.
podcast.
yeah.
Unfortunately, it's the cats that have got all the praise from the chat, but we have noticed you in the background. Thank you for your help. Yeah, I've made her embarrassed now. Sorry for that. Phil, I know
No, yeah.
YouTube is for children. Is there anywhere else they could go to get advice to help them get good at the basics of Blood Bowl?
I think if you spectate a decent game on Fumble with some names that you've heard about, there'll be somebody else in chat to have a conversation with about who's doing a thing and why. Or just listen to the Bonehead podcast. One of those two options.
Okay. I would also say that there's some friends of yours. San's done some lovely stuff on YouTube about some very basic stuff that I think can be a really good entry level. I think Mike Davis has also done some good stuff there. I would talk up obviously the videos of Andy Davo, but also Jimmy Fantastic. There's a lot of really good YouTube content out there. Some of it's very race specific, but it will still cover the basics in terms of how you play, how you set things up. And I do think the Bonehead podcast has a great niche within that. Lots of news, lots of content, lots of things to think about, and certainly to start your journey with some races as they recommend. And then who knows? Maybe there'll be a time you feel you've slightly outgrown it. Cool. Any advice for newer players? I've done it again, haven't I? Sorry. Cool. Any advice for newer players in terms of learning the basics, getting good at Blood Bowl?
You've been like nowadays there's so many videos and stuff to look at to try to help getting a bit fast understanding than we had when we started, where like I was playing with my local friends and then a local league, and then I found Fumble, and in the beginning I had no clue what was going on, to be honest, because you had to trial and error yourself. Nowadays there's so much help to be had from the big internet, even if YouTube it forgets.
I mean, your one-turn guides are permanently linked in my YouTube account, as I think everyone that's interested in Blood Bowl should see them. I think they're fantastic. Great work for the community. A couple of quick ones just to finish us off, and then, as always, I'm going to throw it open to you. Anything you want to say or ask before we finish. Quick one, simply for you, Phil, but I do know that Cor's been over there too. I don't know if Olivia has. Did travelling to the Amorical Cup change how Purplegoo views North American coaches? And same question for anyone that faced Jay Leave at the Home Nations, where thrillingly I invited him over to be part of the Barbarian squad, and he came because he's one of those people who is not ashamed to say he is going to try hard. I'd also add to that list 3 other coaches I talk up that I think will be the big future of Blood Bowl. Thulian, who's in the chat, Hancock, who we had on the last episode, and also Greenskin Phil, who I want to bring on at some point, who's again unashamedly aiming to be an England player, and I think that's a really refreshing attitude. He's not toxic with it. He's a very friendly, nice guy, but he's not ashamed to say he is trying hard. That's one of the ways you get better is you try hard and you're not ashamed of it. So, Phil, did going to the Oracle Cup improve your view of North American Blood Bowl?
Uh, that implies I had a negative view of North American Blood Bowl before I went, which I don't think is true.
Okay.
I think my view of
But
my
you do
North
now.
American my view has not changed. I think there are some very good players there. I think because of the absolute scale of North America, they are extremely spaced out. I think a number of them were in the room on that weekend, and I think that North Americans like slightly wackier rule sets than we like in Europe, even with taking into account Olivier's comments from earlier. I think it was a bonkers weekend of Blood Bowl. Some coaches were great. Everybody was lovely. The Canadians are fantastic hosts. I would recommend that everybody goes if they have the time, money, and inclination.
Before we
Nothing changed.
go to Core on this, I know he's been over to America and played as well. I don't know if Olivier has. Have you ever set foot in the States or played Americans at Blood Bowl?
No.
You should.
No.
You just get easy wins.
Uh,
I've
it's
also
one of
noticed
my dreams.
Torquemada in the chat. I should have mentioned him with the other three. Another, I'm going to say younger because everyone's younger than me. Another younger Blood Bowler who I think has a big future and is again not ashamed about the fact that he's trying hard and doing great things, getting great results in Blood Bowl. I was quite surprised to not see him in the England team, but he blames Core for that and Core's unrealistic view that vampires aren't very good. Core, you've been to America. Did it change your view of American Blood Bowl?
Can we say North America?
Yeah.
In terms, because at least the around Spike and Toronto, Vancouver, and Thunderball is community-wise one of the most wonderful places I've been. They're absolutely delightful, and the same in the States. Like because all of them, they have to do, like even they have to travel so long to get to tournaments. The rule sets are crazy, and the play is what it is, but people love to be there. I think the community spirit is great. We can discuss the rule set.
But,
We can
I mean, if
discuss
I'm in the middle of a
everything else.
desert, if you offer me something horrible like lilt, I'll drink it. But if I'm in a bar, I'm going to drink a whiskey and coke. Do you get my point?
So, yeah, absolutely. I've been twice, and I'd love to go back.
For the easy wins or because of the lovely atmosphere?
No, for the communities.
Okay.
I want to go back to Vancouver, especially. I love those guys for the atmosphere.
Penultimately, how often should a good player, this from the lovely Mike Davis, how often should a worse player be able to beat a good player in a game like Blood Bowl? Now, famously, when asked how much luck was in Blood Bowl, I replied 27%. And as I knew they would, someone said, that's a very specific number. I said, yes, I have a 73% win rate. Therefore, there's a 27% luck in Blood Bowl.
I love that.
Thank you. I was joking. I'm not as toxic elite as people think I am. I'm just mostly having a laugh. How often should a bad player be able to beat a good player in a game like Blood Bowl? In chess, it's 0. That's why we're not chess. Olivier, we haven't started with you for, I don't think, all time. I've given you easy because of your bad level of English. How often should a bad player be able to beat you?
I think it's a big suggest of disagreement with my girlfriend. She's like Blood Bowl is a luck skill game 50-50, and I'm like no, it's maybe 75-25. It's I think I would have a Normand response, as we said in France. It depends of the other coach. I think if I fight, if I have a match against a rookie coach, I have like 95% of chance to win the game, and he really need big removals and big dice to beat me or to have a draw. But if I have a match against KFoged or Purplegoo, maybe the luck I need is more like 55-60%, because and it's not all about tactical. It's about mental and to stay focused during all the game, because one mistakes and the game is over. and but sometimes one we roll one, and the game is over too. So there is a part of luck, and I think better the coach. Not better, but if the other coach has the same level of you, the luck has a more important place than other.
Yeah, so I mean, if you and Core were to play, I think luck would be a huge factor in who came out on top in that game.
Yeah.
But Phil, an average player then, not a bad player, how often should they beat you?
I think, yeah, so you mentioned 70 odd percent. I think that is a common number, right? Over a long enough time frame, the best
73%.
coaches, thank you. Over a long enough time frame, the best coaches sort of tend towards 70 plus or minus 2 or 3, right? And I think that is absolutely spot on. I think when you look at so we've talked about the NAF Championship before tonight, but if you look at that room and the number of shock results you get over the first 2, 3, 4 rounds or whatever, I think it's about right. I
mean, I have to say, when I said that, I was joking. But I kind of meant it both ways, that the 27% that I've lost were luck, but probably also 27% that I've won were luck. So behind the joke, there was some kind of seriousness. I think against an average player, I should lose about 1 in 4. I think that seems reasonable to me. And probably you guys, maybe 1 in 5. I think you are that step up. Cool, what do you think? How often should an average player be able to beat an elite player at Blood Bowl?
How often? How often should it? I think.
Not how often would you
probably
like it, but how often should it happen?
How often I like it? I hate losing anything. Even I said that I rather want to lose a good game than
Are you one of
win
those
a
people
bad
that
game.
beats your kids at games?
I'm getting better.
So yes, brilliant. How often should an average player beat you?
I don't. Yeah, 1 in 5 is probably about right.
Okay. Interesting. We all quite like sort of where Blood Bowl is about now, really, which I guess is why we've all been in it so long.
I think it's interesting because there is that thing where it's still a possibility. Like otherwise, again, we will have been putting our love in chess instead of learning lines in chess.
Yeah.
And memorizing openings and other.
And reading 85 books. I couldn't. And turning up to a tournament and going, oh, well, I'm going to be third then. It doesn't interest me. I like a bit of variance. Now, the final question I wanted to ask you tonight, before giving you a chance to say anything you want to say. Oh, no, there's another one I've missed. Very quickly, who's going to win the Euro Bowl?
France.
Okay, Phil?
You could pick any one of 4 or 5 teams, but I will just remind people that England have won 6 of the last 8. So
Okay.
we're not, we might do all right.
Cool.
If I had to part money, I will probably put them on France. If
Says the England captain. There you are. Wow. Wow. What a response.
What a way to put some pressure on us.
Don't expect to be voted in next year with that kind of thinking. Okay, good. That was a nice quick one. Therefore, we do have time for just one more. Who should I have had here instead of you? Who is the one person? I'm going to limit you to one. The one person in Blood Bowl that impresses you as a coach. Who is, in your head, an elite Blood Bowl coach that I perhaps haven't mentioned or name checked, or even if I have, could have been here tonight on this panel with 3 NAF number ones, as Phil desperately wanted everyone to know. Who else? The one person. I'm gonna go with a very left field one. I'm gonna say Barney the Lurker, who doesn't put himself forward for England teams or anything like that. But I've played him and I've talked to him about Blood Bowl and I've seen him in chats, and he just always got a sensible view, always knows what he's talking about, and incredibly tough to beat on the field. Just a really good all-around Blood Bowler. I think he's an elite level player, hiding under the guise of never really taking on the super competitive formats. So there's my really left field shout for Barney the Lurker. Kur, who is an elite level player? Who impresses you in Blood Bowl?
That's a lot.
If you say no one, that's the most toxic elite answer ever.
If I take somebody that's not often getting me, Straume.
Okay.
A good Norwegian friend.
Okay. Olivier,
even
I'm
pick
expecting a
French.
French name, but maybe not. Who impresses you at Blood Bowl?
I think the last coach who impressed me in his level at Blood Bowl is Bad Storm, Italian coach. I played against him at German Team Ball last year, and he really made an absolute massive match. He didn't win. He didn't win, but he deserved it, and that's an elite coach.
Okay. And Phil.
There are loads of brilliant coaches,
Yeah,
right? There are
there
going
are.
to be, you know,
Pick one,
with it, you know, obviously Dimmy G, but under that, I
obviously.
think,
The champ.
I think somebody that I've played a lot who is a little bit different to most people is Jim Jiminy. And I'm not saying he's better than anybody else, but he plays the game in a different way and looks at it in a different way. So he's very humble, and also maybe he couldn't articulate exactly, you know, the difference that he brings, but he's always somebody that should be in the conversation.
I would love if we could bring him and Fisher King to play a game.
Oh, well, there's another name that could easily have been mentioned, isn't it? Fisher King.
But yeah, he's not really playing anymore. But
No, but
I
fabulous
would
coach
love
in
to
his
see
day.
him when he was in his top and him and Jim play. That thing could have been great.
Okay, look, that's everyone. Yeah, it's a good point actually. Google. Why did none of you say me? I think that is a good point. And you know, one that I'm just going to have a long think about tonight. I'll cope. I'll get over it. That is the end. That's 2 hours of your time and your life and everyone else's life, and that's way too much already. But I have traditionally been ending since someone very smart in the chat, not me, mentioned that I should. At the end now, I tend to ask, is there anything we haven't covered that you want to talk about? Anything you want to ask? This is your final chance to say something on this podcast before I wrap it all up with my Jerry Springer final words. Phil, anything we haven't covered so far, or anything you want to say?
I mean, nothing we haven't covered, but I'm looking forward to Core's inspirational team talk about how we're going to beat France. Come on, you've got to start working on that now.
I go with Henry V, like Tony Adams. Do some Henry V. You know, invite them to fill up the gaps with their English dead. Remember Agincourt, all of that.
We probably should start with beating Spain, but one game at a time, right?
Okay, Olivier, what haven't we covered, or what do you want to mention?
I just had made my homework about the question for the animal. If we are not, you have a question on the podcast, and I had worked my answer. So why there is no question about it right now?
Okay, what did I say the question was going to be? What animal would you like to be?
Yeah, not exactly that. Just let me 1 second.
I think it was if you're not going to be a mammal, what would
Yeah,
it be?
absolutely. That was that.
Okay, if you're not a mammal, what would you be?
I think I would love to be a crocodile because of documentaries I used to watch with my nanny when I was a child, and it's my number one animal, crocodile.
Okay, I ended up not putting that on my question list, so my apologies. Phil, did you get an answer for that?
No, a tree.
Oh, just because there's stability,
Wood elf.
Yeah, just chilling out
the shade they give
outside.
to others. You're a giver. Core, a non-mammal, what would you pick to be?
Once again, I'm terrible at doing my homework. You should know that about me by now.
But you've had multiple seconds to think of it.
Yeah, I was trying. Gonna be let me be a giant turtle.
Giant turtle, okay. The obvious answer to me is shark.
No.
Just because they're nice and cool. But actually, I've always quite liked sea cucumbers. If you scuba dive, you'll find they are incredible colours.
Yeah.
And they don't move around a lot, so you can just sort of chill out, watch them sort of rippling along underwater. They're really cool, multicoloured, cool things. So I would be a sea cucumber.
I was wrong earlier. This is the TikTok bit. Cut this bit.
Cool.
Kids will go for
Anything
it.
we haven't touched on or said that you want to say before we say goodnight?
No, thank you. But hope to see a lot of people in Athens next weekend.
Yeah,
For
I
the
hope so too.
Weekend of Blood Bowl.
I laugh about being called the toxic elite. I'm not elite. I try very hard not to be toxic. I get why people think that. For a while, I saw the entire of Team England as the toxic elite, mainly because despite knowing them, I felt it was an unknowable, unjoinable club. I think it's very easy sometimes to look at people that are where you want to be in terms of anything and think that they are in some ways toxic or in some ways trying to do you down or whatever. I promise you, all I'm doing with this Blood Bowl podcast is chilling out, chatting to people I know about making the sort of content I want to make because I would want to consume it, and I didn't feel it was out there. We're not setting an agenda. We're not trying to be toxic. We're not trying to be elite. I do happen to know, just through random chance, some of the best Blood Bowlers on earth, and I'm very lucky in that when I ask them on, they say yes. I hope that's interesting to people. I hope it doesn't come over as we're trying to do anything or say anything or set ourselves apart in any way. We're just people that enjoy playing Blood Bowl and enjoy talking about playing Blood Bowl, or else they wouldn't be here. So I hope that's been interesting for you all. It's been the 50th episode of One World, One Blood Bowl, which I find amazing. For those of you that have waited right to the very end, I do have a slight surprise, but unfortunately, my dice maker has let me down. For the Euro Bowl, I was given a ticket and asked to go on a team and then asked to captain that team, so I had to pick a name for it. So I picked One World, One Blood Bowl. And much to the disgust of people who think there's too many dice in Blood Bowl and that we're just creating a plastic trash heap for the kids of the future to worry about, I decided we would have some One World, One Blood Bowl dice made. Hopefully they arrive in time for the Euro Open, but now it's looking like they probably won't. But as and when they do arrive, I've made sure we have enough to give out there, but also enough that I have some to give out to people that enjoy watching One World, One Blood Bowl. So hopefully for number 51, there will be a selection of One World, One Blood Bowl dice available to you. What I then plan to do is to put them on eBay for a reasonable amount, something like £8-10, and then do shipping to anywhere in the world through eBay, so anyone that wants them can have them. I confess there'll be a slight profit in that, but then I don't make any money off One World, One Blood Bowl. So if you want to say thank you to me and have yourself some One World, One Blood Bowl dice, hopefully episode 51 will see me talking about and making those available to you. I hope you enjoy One World, One Blood Bowl. I know it's been a bit patchy this year with my work commitments and things, but when I get back for the Euro Open, I do plan an entire autumn of episodes. I've already got several ideas in my head as to what I want them to be. If you have any ideas for episodes, drop past my Discord or drop me a message on Fumble or via Facebook if you really have to, or any of those other ways that we all communicate, and let me know what you want me to talk about, and I will find the people and I will do the episode. As always, One World, One Blood Bowl will just continue to bounce around Blood Bowl, talking to the people involved and never mentioning that game on Thursday where if you'd rolled a 3 you'd have won. I just don't think that's interesting to people. I think what we learned from that game is interesting, but not necessarily the dice itself. So we've managed to avoid talking about that 3+ that we failed all night, except Olivia, who did mention it once. Thank you for coming along or taking part or listening or whatever it is that you do. Thank you for the chat who've been a huge part of this. And in 50 more episodes, we will do one where I am naked, I promise. If we make it to 100, I will be naked. Let's hope we don't. Now, if everyone could wave and say goodbye, it's a nice easy point for me to find in the edit. Thank you very much. That was One World, One Blood Bowl number 50, saying night-night. Night-night.
Night night.
Night night.